Imagine buying a car that came welded shut. It runs beautifully, it does everything you need, and the day it runs out of fuel, that is the end of it. You cannot refuel it, you cannot open the bonnet, you cannot replace a single part. You simply push it off a cliff and buy another one. It would be an absurd way to own a car. It is, more or less exactly, how we have run the most expensive machines humanity puts into space. Now, I should say where I stand, because this video is going to end with an opinion. I think a spacecraft that launched this month is one of the quietly historic objects of the year, and that it will get almost none of the attention that a new rocket or a new telescope would. It does something that sounds mundane and is actually radical. It is a repair vehicle for machines that were deliberately built to be unrepairable. Because there is a particular orbit far out where the most valuable satellites live. It is called geostationary orbit, and its special trick is that a satellite there circles the Earth at exactly the speed the Earth turns, so from the ground it appears to hang perfectly still in the sky. That is why your satellite dish can be bolted in one position and never move. The satellite it points at is, in effect, parked. And if you asked what eventually kills one of these parked satellites, you would probably guess it breaks or its electronics fail. But you know what? That is usually not it. Very often, everything on board still works perfectly. What runs out is fuel. A satellite needs to fire small thrusters constantly just to hold its exact position. And when the propellant for those is gone, a fully functional machine worth a fortune becomes uncontrollable and has to be retired. So here is what we are going to do. First, why we built these things to be thrown away in the first place. Then, what actually launched this month, and the genuinely difficult thing it has to do. And finally, the big one. Why a boring sounding repair truck might change the entire economics of space. First up, the disposable habit. For the whole history of the satellite, the logic has been brutally simple. Getting to orbit is so expensive and so violent that everything is optimized to launch once and never be touched again. There was never a mechanic up there, so nothing was designed for a mechanic. No fuel port a hose could attach to. No handle built for a robot to grip. These machines were sealed, in the way a message in a bottle is sealed, because nobody was ever expected to open them. And that assumption quietly wrote off staggering amounts of value. A large communication satellite is a machine of extraordinary cost, and many of them have been retired with almost everything still working, simply because one tank was empty. The equivalent, on the ground, would be scrapping an airliner the first time it needed refueling because you had built every airport without a single fuel truck. So the object that launched this month is, in the plainest terms, the fuel truck. It is built by Northrop Grumman, and it is called, rather flatly, the Mission Robotic Vehicle. It went up on the 21st of July, and it is now slowly climbing to that high geostationary orbit, where it will spend roughly the next decade working. And what it carries is the interesting part. It has two robotic arms, each about 10 feet long, and it went up alongside three separate devices that are, essentially, strap-on propulsion packs. Think of them as jet packs for satellites. The plan is that the robot flies up to an aging satellite, takes hold of it, and fixes one of these packs onto it, and the pack then does the position, keeping that the satellite itself no longer can. Now sit with how hard that is. The target satellite is not cooperating. It has no docking port, no markings put there to help, no handle. It was built, remember, to never be touched. So the robot has to approach a large, fast-moving, uncooperative object, match its motion exactly, and physically grab it somewhere it was never designed to be grabbed. All of this happening tens of thousands of kilometers from any human being who could intervene if it went wrong. And the tolerances are unforgiving. Both machines are traveling at thousands of meters per second. They are effectively motionless relative to one another, only if the approach is judged perfectly. A clumsy touch does not dent a bumper. It can send a priceless satellite tumbling or create a cloud of debris in the one orbit we can least afford to pollute. This is surgery performed by a robot on a patient who is moving and did not consent and cannot be anesthetized. The robotic hardware for this kind of grappling came in part out of work by the United States Naval Research Laboratory, and it is worth pausing on why the arms matter more than the jetpacks. The propulsion packs are clever, but not conceptually new. The arms are the breakthrough, because a machine that can reliably grab an uncooperative satellite can, in principle, do far more than bolt on a fuel pack. It can inspect, it can reposition. Eventually, it might repair or refuel directly. And honestly, this is where the usual framing frustrates me. Because when this gets covered at all, it gets filed under space debris as a tidy environmental story about cleaning up junk. That is real and it matters. But it badly undersells the thing. This is not primarily a bin lorry. It is the first arrival of maintenance as a concept, in a place that has never had any. The story is not that we can remove the dead. It is that we might stop things from dying. Now, to be fair, one robot does not remake an industry. This is a first of its kind vehicle attempting first of its kind operations, and the failure modes are unforgiving in a way that little else is. It is expensive. It is slow, because each of these encounters is delicate and cannot be rushed. And an economy of orbital servicing, with many robots tending many satellites, is a hopeful extrapolation from a single careful pioneer, not a thing that yet exists. But the reason to care is that this quietly attacks two problems at once, which almost nothing in space does. It extends the life of enormously valuable machines, which is money. And every satellite whose life is extended is a satellite not abandoned to clutter, an orbit that is already worryingly crowded, which is safety. The same act saves the asset and protects the neighborhood. That is a rare and genuinely good shape for a technology to have. And there is something I find quietly moving about it, underneath the engineering. For 70 years, everything we have sent up has been, in a sense, sent to die alone. Brilliant, expensive machines, launched with no expectation of care, abandoned the moment they faltered. This clumsy, slow, 10-foot armed robot is the first thing we have ever sent up, whose entire job is to look after the others. It is not exploration, it is maintenance. And a civilization that starts maintaining its infrastructure in a place, rather than just abandoning it there, is a civilization that has decided, finally, to stay. So the thing to watch is not going to be dramatic. There will not be a spectacular image. Success here looks like an old satellite that simply keeps working, years past the date it should have died, held in place by a jetpack bolted on by a robot nobody will think about. But if it works, it is the moment space stopped being a place we only launch into and started being a place we actually keep. And that shift, when the history is written, will matter more than most of the launches that made the news.